تقراي ሃይማኖት ዘይፈለ ንሓርነት ኩሉ ሓቢሩ ተላዕለ ንማዕርነት ዓዱ ወጥዕ ትግራዋይ አንቱ መተለ
የትግራይ ሽማግሌዎች እና አንዳንድ ሰዎች ሳናግር በጣም ሐዘን ይሰማኛል። ይሄ ሀገርና መንግስት ቢያንስ ባለፉት 100 ዓመታት እንኳን ስንትና ስንት ወራሪ ለመከላከል ትግራይ ምድረ በዳ የሆነችው በውጊያ ነው። ይሄ ሁሉ ዋጋ የከፈለ ህዝብ ስንት ሺህ የገበረ ህዝብ የሆነ ሰው አጠፋ ብላችሁ ዙሪያውን በሙሉ ልትወጉን ልታጠፉ እንዴት ሰራላችሁ? አሁን እንደዛ ምናስበው እንደዛ ይፈልጋል። በዚሁ ለወንድሜ የሚነግርህ መከላከያውን እኔ አውጥቼ የሆነ ጠላት መጥቶ ትግራይን 1 ሜትር ማጥቃት ይፈልግ መንግስት ቢተኛ እመነኝ የአማራ ሚሊሻ አይተኛም። አይተኛም። ኢትዮጵያዊ በዘመናት መካከል በወገን ጥቃት ላይ ተደራድሮ አያውቅም። መከላከያ ማቆም አለማቆም ምናምን አያስፈልገውም። ጥቃት ከመጣ የትግራይ ጥቃት የኛ የሁላችን ጥቃት ነው። የጨረባ ምርጫ ለማድረግ መነሳት ሀገርንና ህዝብን ለከፋ አደጋ የሚዳርግ በመሆኑ መንግስት ሀገርንና የህዝብን ደህንነት ለመጠበቅ ሲል ወሳኝ እርምጃ ለመውሰድ ይገደዳል። የሀገሬ ህዝቦይ ዛሬ ከሃዲ ኢትዮጵያውያን ኢትዮጵያን ወቅተዋታል። ኢትዮጵያ ያጎረሰ እጇ ያጠባ ጡቷ ተነክሷል። ላለፉት 20 ዓመታት በቀበሮ ምሽግ ውስጥ በመሆን ሀገሬ ወገኔ ህዝቤ ብሎ በብዙ ሺዎች መስዋዕትነት ከፍሎ ቆስሎ ደምቶ ደክሞ ሀገሩንና ህዝቡን የታደገው የሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት ዛሬ ምሽት ከመቀሌ ጀምሮ በበርካታ ስፍራዎች በከሃዲ ኃይሎች እና ባደራጁት ኃይል ጥቃት ተፈጽሞበታል። ይህ ጥቃት በሀገራችን እስካሁን ከደረሱ ጥቃቶች እጅግ አስነዋሪ የሚያደርገው ሰላም ለማስከበር በተለያየ ሀገር የተሰማራው የሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት እንኳ በውጭ ኃይሎች ያልደረሰበትን ጥቃት በገዛ ወገኖቹ ከጀርባው እንዲመታ ብዙዎች እንዲሰዉ እንዲቆስሉ ንብረቶች እንዲወድሙ ተደርገዋል። ይህ የጥፋት ኃይል ላለፉት በርካታ ወራት እኩይ ተግባራት ሲፈጽም ቆይቷል። በተለይም በተለያየ የሀገራችን ክፍሎች ባሰለጠናቸው ባስታጠቃቸው እና ባሰማራቸው ኃይሎች በንጹሃን ዜጎች ላይ እጅግ ዘግናኝ የሆነ ጥቃት ሲፈጽም መቆየቱ ይታወቃል። የዚህ ጥቃት ዋነኛ ዓላማ የሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት ትኩረቱን እንዲያጣ እንዲበተን ዜጎች በመከላከል ላይ እንዲያተኩርና ባሻቸው ጊዜ እዚያ ባለው ኃይል ላይ ጥቃት ለመሰንዘር የዘየዱት የእኩይ ዘዴ ነው። ይሁንና ዛሬ በመቀሌና በአንዳንድ አካባቢዎች ከፈጸሙብን ጥቃት በተጨማሪ በዳንሻ በኩል በአማራ ክልል ላይ ጥቃት ፈጽመዋል። በአማራ ክልል የነበረው ኃይል ይህንን ጥቃት የመከተ ሲሆን በመላው የትግራይ ክልል ያለው ሰራዊት ለትግራይ ክልል ከእንግዲህ በኋላ ጥይት አያስፈልግም፣ የጥይት ድምጽ አይገባውም፣ ይህ ህዝብ ብዙ ደክሟል፣ ብዙ ተቸግሯል፣ ለነዚህ እኩይ ተግባር ለሚፈጽሙ ከሃዲ ኃይሎች የትግራይ ህዝብ ምሽግ ቢሆንም ለኛ ወገናችን ነውና ወገናችንን ለነዚህ ሰዎች ስንል አናጠቃም ብሎ በከፍተኛ ትዕግስት የቆየው የሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት ባልጠበቀ ሁኔታ ጥቃት ተፈጽሞበታል። ይህ ጥቃት በመላ ሀገራችን ቀድመው ባሰለጠኑት ባሰማሩት ባዘጋጁት ኃይል በተለያየ ከተማ በተለያየ ቦታ መሰል በንጹሃን ዜጎች ላይ የሚፈጸም ጥቃት ሊካሄድ ስለሚችል መላው የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ከሚሊሻ ከፖሊስ ሰራዊት እንዲሁም በአካባቢያቸው ከሚገኝ የሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት ጋር በመተባበር ቀያቸውን፣ ጎረቤታቸውን፣ ሰፈራቸውን፣ ከተማቸውን፣ አካባቢያቸውን በንቃት እንዲጠብቁ እያሳሰብኩ የሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት ከጠቅላይ ሰፈር በሚሰጥ ትዕዛዝ መሰረት መለየውን ሀገሩን እና ህዝቡን እንዲከላከል ለሚከፍለው መስዋዕትነት ዛሬም እንደተለመደው በታሪክ ውስጥ የሚታሰብ መሆኑን እየገለጽኩ ይህ የእኩይ ኃይል መጥፊያው በመድረሱ በሰላም በንግግር በውይይት ሊፈቱ የሚችሉ ነገሮችን ባለፉት ጥቂት ቀናት ካለምንም ሀፍረት በሚዲያ በመውጣት ከየትኛውም የውጭ ኃይል ጋር በመተባበር ኢትዮጵያን ወጋለው ብሎ ሲያውጅ ሲናገር የነበረው ኃይል ይህን ለማመን የሚያስቸግር ንግግር በተግባር በዚህ ምሽት አረጋግጧል። ይህ ጉዳይ ለኢትዮጵያውያን እጅግ አሳዛኝ አሳፋሪም ቢሆን ዛሬም እንደተለመደው እኛ ኢትዮጵያውያን በተደመረ በተባበረ ክንድ ይህንን ከሃዲ ጡት ነካሽ ኃይል ለማሳፈርና ለመደምሰስ አስፈላጊውን ሁሉ የምናደርግ መሆኑን እየገለጽኩ የትግራይ ህዝብ ወገኔ ዘመዴ ህዝቤ ብሎ ላለፉት 20 ዓመታት በቀበሮ ምሽግ ውስጥ በመሆን በብዙ ሺዎች የሚቆጠር መስዋዕትነት የከፈለውንና አንተን ለመጠበቅ አስፈላጊውን ሁሉ ያደረገው የሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት የደረሰበት ጥቃትህ መሆኑን በመገንዘብ ከሀገር መከላከያ ሰራዊት ጋር በመሆን ሀገርህን እንድትከላከል እንድትጠብቅ እያሳሰብኩ ለመላው የሀገራችን ህዝቦች አስፈላጊውን መረጃ በየጊዜው በሚመለከታቸው የመንግስት አካላት የሚሰጥ መሆኑን እየገለጽኩ ኢትዮጵያ ዛሬም እንደ ትላንቱ ተደምራ ተባብራ የገጠማትን ፈተና ትሻገራለች፣ ጠላቷን ታሸንፋለች። ይህ አሳፋይ ድርጊት በማይደገም ሁኔታ የሚቀለበስበትን መንገድ መላው የሀገራችን ህዝቦችና የሀገር መከላከያ ሚኒስቴር በመተባበር የሚፈጽሙት ይሆናል።
November, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed launched airstrikes and sent federal troops into Tigray, saying he was responding to attacks by the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front. Witnesses say Eritrean forces crossed the border to support the Ethiopian military, and while here, committed egregious crimes.
We wish that Al Jazeera convey our message and make our voice heard. We demand the exit of the Eritrean forces from our country.
Eritrean soldiers deny ever being in Tigray. Yet Al Jazeera obtained these images showing trucks with Eritrean license plates in Tigray carrying soldiers. Amnesty International also released a report stating hundreds of civilians were massacred by Eritrean soldiers in the town of Axum in November.
The Eritrean forces called reinforcement and then proceeded to shoot wantonly at civilians on the streets using sniper rifles and machine guns.
Ethiopia's government has questioned the accuracy of Amnesty's sources, but says an investigation will be launched. As information slowly seeps out, survivors live with their truth every day.
My husband was killed in our village, along with a lot. Please go tell the world we're dying.
By their accounts, at the hands of soldiers who deny ever entering this land. Charlotte Ballas, Al Jazeera.
ملختي أبي تجري زخفت وكينات زباون علمون زي مرجع كفتر زلوا تقولوا عبي بمخانو محور سبع عالم تقطك جبرن كونن بريزيدنت تجري دكتور دبرتسين قرم كايل قاليتهم دكتور دبرتسين محور سبع عالم أبز صحف ودبداب تجري أبتم زحلف غلت عمتات أبز هاجر أقواني فنزلوا خبيت قولوا مفتوحيون وكل زكاتته لز مخانو كتقلت مسنحن وجل أبي أحمد أماراتي لزبن سلام الرقيصو علمون حقتات بزت حس كنت كل عكينات خفيتو كتماتات يدودم هلا ምህላው ገሊጾም ጉጅለ አብይ አሕመድ ንትግራይ አጓኒ ምስውል ቀመላኺ ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂ ሓይልታት ወፃን ግንባር ፈጢሩን ህዝቡ ይወግእ ምህላው ዘዘኻኸሩቶም ፕሬዝደንት ከም ውጽኢት ሰላማዊ ብግፍዒ ስደዱን ይቕተሉ ምህላዎም ሓቢሮም እዚ ሓይሊ ፖለቲካውን ሕገ መንግስታውን ቁልውላው ኢትዮጵያ ብልዝብ ንምፍታሕ ዝቐረቡ ኣማራፅታት ንጎኒ ገዲፉ ኣፈላላያት ብደማዊ ኩናት ክፈትሕ ሕርድግ ይብል ኣሎ ዝበሉ እቶም ፕሬዝደንት ትግራይ ዶክተር ደብረጽዮን ገብረሚካኤል ንመንግስቲ ኤርትራን ሓይልታት ወፃን ብምስታፍ ህዝቡ ብቕሉዕ ይጭፍጭፍ ምህላው ኣገንዚቦም ሓይልታት ወፃኢ ሰብ ኣልባ ነፈርቲ ብምፋር ብቐጥታ ኣብቲ ኩናት ብምስታፍ ነቲ ኩነታት ካብ ዝኸፍእ ናብ ዝሓመቐ ኩነታት የሰጋግርዎ ምህላዎምን ንዞባ ቀርኒ ኣፍሪካ ናብ ዝኸፍእ ሕምስምስ የእትዋ ምህላዎም ዝሓበሩ ዶክተር ደብረጽዮን ሓላፍነት ዝጎደሎ ተግባር አብይ አሕመድን ነቲ ፀገም ዓለማዊ ምስሊ የትሕዞን የጋደኑ ምህላው ገሊጾም እቲ ኣብ ትግራይ ተኣዊጅ ዘሎ ኩናት በሰልኡ ንዞባ ቀርኒ ኣፍሪካን ዓለምን ዝተርፊ ዝበሉ እቶም ፕሬዝደንት ሰላማውያን ብዝኸፍእ ከይህሰይን እቲ ኩነታት ካብ ቁፅጥር ወፃኢ ከይኸውንን ማሕበረሰብ ዓለም ኣብ ልዕልቶም ሓላፍነት ዘይስማዕ ሓይልታት ኩናት ጠጠው ከብሉ ጻቅ ትገብርን ውን ፀዊዖም ኣለዎም
أنا في الحين من شكل حزبي نا كل حزبي سلز هون المحزبة وهناتي نانلوسي وراريو زغم تزلو حزبة وهناتي نان نحن نقول حزبة وهناتنا حزب وقع مالك كله ساتفل مالك أو قال عجمير كله نا وتادرات قدام ما زبالي بلنا نحن وتادر سلزلي أن أنت زي وين كله ببعامو واقعي كمكتي كله تقرأي قال إذا دقف كدقفي قد نحن كله كم تقارو نقط منها حرنتنا حزن سلز فتحوا خيناتي سلز خوانا ما هنسعروا منها ساقيونا يكوننا فعلنا يكوننا بقول واتو كم بركنا نزمسة هنك أورأينا بصر تاريخنا نسي زي أكتفل لدى الله
ወየንትን አባላት ሚሊሻን ዞባ ምብራቅ ትግራይ በወገን ግንባር ዕዳጋ ሐሙስ ዝመፀ ጸላኢ ብዝለዓለ ጅግነት ክምክትዎ ከም ዝኻሉ ወታደራዊ ወሃቢ ቃል ሓይልታት ምክልኻል ትግራይ ተጋዳላይ ገብረ ጻድቅ ሓቢሮም ኣብ ካልኦት ከባቢታት ዘለው ወየንትን አባላት ሚሊሻን ድማ ነዚ ዘኹርዕ ኣብነታዊ ተግባር ክስዕብዎ ፀዊዑ ሓዝውን ሰሎም ክፍላይ ንዘዋርዱ ጽብጻብ ኣፈወርቅ ገብረ ህይወት ከም ዝስዕብ ቀርቦም
ወየንትን አባላት ሚሊሻን ዞባ ምብራቅ ትግራይ ኣብ ጎና ሓይልታት ምክልኻል ትግራይ ተሰሊፎም ብወገን ዕዳጋ ሐሙስ ንዝመፀ ጸላኢ ብዝለዓለ ጅግነት ክምክትዎ ከም ዝኽኣሉን እዚ ድማ ትግራይ ንጸላእታ ረመፅ ምዃና መርአይ እዩ ክብል ወታደራዊ ወሃቢ ቃል ሓይልታት ምክልኻል ትግራይ ተጋዳላይ ገብረ ጻድቅ ገሊጾም
Our world lead now, a brand new CNN investigation revealing the heartbreaking and extremely disturbing reality for women in Ethiopia, where an escalating conflict in the Tigray region has caused thousands of deaths and others to flee their homes. The Biden administration brought the humanitarian crisis in the African nation to the forefront this week, announcing that the administration was sending more than $50 million in aid to the region and dispatching close Biden ally Senator Chris Coons, Democrat of Delaware, to the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, to meet with the country's prime minister and address what Secretary of State Blinken has labeled an ethnic cleansing.
The challenge in Ethiopia is very significant, and it's one that we're very focused on, particularly the situation in Tigray, where we are seeing very credible reports of human rights abuses and atrocities that are ongoing.
Now, CNN has learned that soldiers in the Tigray region are using rape as a weapon of war, and we want to warn you some of what you're about to hear and see is graphic. CNN's Nima Elbagir joins me live now from the Sudan-Ethiopia border. Nima, we hear the descriptions of a humanitarian crisis and ethnic cleansing. Who's responsible for these alleged crimes?
Well, what we're hearing from the women that we've been speaking to, Jake, really is that they feel like no man in uniform is safe for them. A combination of ethnic Amhara militias from the Amhara ethnic group allied with the government, soldiers from neighboring Eritrea, soldiers from the Fano Amhara ethnic militia. Even here in Hamdayet, just a few months ago, this was a safe haven for Tigrayans. There were so many refugees that were able to cross here. Now they're describing to us a toxic mix of all of those forces, the ethnic militia, the Fano militia, the Eritrean soldiers, blocking them just from across the river from where we're standing here, from coming to safety. Even here in Hamdayet, they feel that shadow, Jake. They feel that fear.
And you were able to speak with a doctor who's treating some of the women who have been attacked and even one of the victims.
We went to a clinic where Dr. Tedros Tefera, this extraordinary surgeon, when he was at home in Tigray, here he's taken over the running of the clinic. He was examining a young woman who we asked if we could speak with, and we discovered that she had been raped, and she gave us permission to broadcast this. Jake, take a look at it.
He pushed me and said, "You Tigrayans have no history. You have no culture. I can do what I want to you, and no one cares."
What brought you to the clinic here today?
I haven't told anyone, but I've been thinking that I'm pregnant from the rape. So I came to check, and I discovered I am.
And Dr. Tedros says that of the cases that are actually reported to him, like that young lady, maybe less than 10. But the cases that he suspects, based on the injuries that they present with, he thinks that just here in Hamdayet they could be potentially in the thousands. And he believes that this isn't just about ill discipline, as horrible as that is, that this is part of a campaign that's being intentionally waged against the women of Tigray. This is what he told us, Jake.
The women that have been raped say that the things that they say to them when they were raping them is that they need to change their identity, to either Amharanize them or at least leave their Tigrinya status, and then they've come there to cleanse them.
Cleanse the bloodline?
Cleanse the bloodline, and then get them that they are different. Practically, this has been a genocide of different phases.
And it is that cleansing of the bloodline that these women say that they're being told is being done to them. That's what gives this the hallmarks of a genocide, Jake. That's what gives this the hallmarks of an ethnic cleansing rather than just an unfortunate consequence of war. And it's not just here in Hamdayet that our team have been gathering evidence. Our extraordinary team has also been working on gathering evidence from inside Tigray. And I have to warn you and our viewers that what we're about to share with you is incredibly, incredibly upsetting. But it is a key piece of evidence in the wielding of rape as a weapon of war. A doctor from inside Tigray was able to record a video of a procedure being carried out to remove foreign objects that had been inserted into an alleged rape victim's vagina. And we can't show you the video. The video is absolutely too horrifying. I watched it. It's It's nauseating, it's appalling, but we can show you these stills. And these stills are what the doctors removed from inside this woman who told them that she had been held captive by Eritrean soldiers and raped multiple times over a period of days. And you can see in those stills, in a bucket, those foreign objects were nails measuring around 3 inches, rocks, used condoms, and this is rape as a weapon of humiliation. It's a weapon of collective punishment, and the fear that it has instilled in the women, even here in this safe haven in Hamdaet, Jake, is so awful to witness.
These stories and images that you're bringing to our viewers, it's so important, obviously also so heartbreaking. We know that President Biden has dispatched his good friend, Senator Coons. But beyond that, what else is the U.S. doing to help end this crisis?
Well, the U.S. has, as Secretary Blinken said, upped its humanitarian spend. But in practical terms, what the U.S. is not doing, which it should be doing, is ensuring that here, this safe haven in Hamdaet, remains open. And that is not happening. This is really the only safe place for many Tigrayans, and the Ethiopian forces, Ethiopian allied forces, Ethiopian government forces, we're told, are blocking that. That's a war crime. Blocking safe passage to fleeing communities would meet the metrics, the guidelines for a war crime, Jake. That is a simple fix. Give more humanitarian spend here to the agencies and people like Dr. Tedros, who hasn't been paid for months. He's doing this for free, who are helping the communities here. But pressure the Ethiopians to relieve some of that fear and some of that pain that's just across the border. Let them come here. The Sudanese government has agreed to give them safe haven. Allow them to take up that opportunity while that situation is being resolved, Jake.
18-year-old Mona Lisa is traumatized by one day, the 4th of December. It was then, she says, Eritrean soldiers entered her village in the Ethiopian region of Tigray.
They tried to rape me, and I was thrown to the ground. Then one of the soldiers fired bullets to scare me. But they hit my hand and then fired another bullet that went through my arm. I was bleeding for hours. Then I had my arm amputated.
Al Jazeera has gained rare access to Tigray and heard from witnesses who say they suffered abuses that could amount to war crimes.
Some girls and I managed to leave the village, but on the road we were caught by Eritrean soldiers. More than 10 soldiers took turns raping us.
What does sexual violence as a weapon of war in a conflict like this do to children and young women? I mean, what's the impact, James?
It's heartbreaking. I mean, literally, if I talk about the people I spoke to, they're really brave. And obviously, I'm only speaking to those people who, it's the tip of the iceberg, the cases we see, because they're the ones who fought through a cultural barrier of shame to report it, or found our health centre, or got transport, or got through the conflict. And what it does, I mean, some of these are grossly violent, Becky. Some of these were groups of soldiers over multiple days in front of a child or in front of a husband. And what it does is it shatters them. You know, anyone who hears the story has sleepless nights. These children or their mums, girls or their mums, you've got years of time it takes to get over it. Now, again, UNICEF will be there. We will be there with psychological support. We'll be there with dignity kits and everything we can. But let's make it perfectly clear, you know, that the authorities need to denounce these things very publicly, and perpetrators need to know that there's an accountability and that sexual violence in conflicts is a war crime, is a breach of international law. But first and foremost, despite all the people who are saying this needs to stop, it's not stopping, Becky. You know, I saw one single centre where we have 3 reported cases a day. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's immensely damaging for children, and it's very hard to see how they get over it. UNICEF, as I say, will be with them every step of the way, but we need the parties to the conflict to stop doing this.
ስለ ሰብአዊ መብት ጥሰት የሚሰቃዩ ትግራይ ስላለው ችግር የሚሰቃዩ ሰዎች የሰሜን ዕዝ ጥቃት በሚመለከት ምንም አያነሱ። ሰሜን ዕዝ እኮ አልተጠቃም፣ ተዋረደ። ሴቶች እኮ አሁን በወንድ የተደፈሩት የኛ ወታደሮች ግን በሳንጃ ተደፍረዋል። ስለነሱ የሚያነሳ ሰው የለም።
Amnesty International says a massacre of civilians during last year's conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region could amount to a crime against humanity. A report by the rights group says soldiers from Eritrea systematically killed hundreds of people in the city of Aksum in November. The Ethiopian government says its Human Rights Commission is investigating crimes during the conflict. Let's speak now to the report's author, Jean-Baptiste Galopin in Berlin. He is a crisis research consultant at Amnesty International. Thank you for your time. This sounds harrowing. Tell us more about your findings.
So what we uncovered, the main crime that we uncovered was a massacre, as you mentioned, by Eritrean forces of civilians, of hundreds of civilians in Aksum over the course of roughly 24 hours on the 28th and the 29th of November. The killings took place in retaliation for an attack by a small group of pro-TPLF fighters supported by a local youth armed with sticks and rocks. And in response to this attack, the Eritrean forces called reinforcement and then proceeded to shoot wantonly at civilians on the streets using sniper rifles and machine guns. People describe harrowing scenes of people running and being shot in the back, or people being, lined up one behind the other and executed by Eritrean soldiers. In addition, Eritrean soldiers carried out house-to-house raids to find adult and teenage men to kill. And in the aftermath of the massacre, Eritrean soldiers shot at the residents who tried to collect the bodies and prevented people from carrying out burials for roughly a day. People described very harrowing scenes of collecting bodies, eventually bodies that had begun to decompose, of bodies of friends, of strangers, of neighbors, of family members. We believe that hundreds of people were killed, as I said.
I saw them from above. They were all killed.
They start pushing people out of their houses. They were killing all children, women, and old men.
The voices you can hear are describing a massacre in a small village in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. These are the names and pictures of some of the dead, voiced by a man desperate to memorialize those lost on a holy day in November. Abraham, who we are not identifying for his safety, is one of the many memory keepers of Maryam Dangalat, inspired by a tradition from the Orthodox religion to name the dead so they are never forgotten. CNN has been able to verify the identities of over 50 people who were killed there over the course of 3 days. But there may be more than double that. This is the story of one village, but families across Tigray have been sharing pictures of loved ones with CNN, whom they say have been killed in the violence across the region. A simple memorial to a Sunday school boy, eyewitnesses say, was killed by Eritrean troops at Mariam Dangalat on one of the most holy days of the year, the festival of St. Mary. The shoes you see mark the shallow grave of 15-year-old Johannes Yusuf. Abraham took the shoes off each body he buried and placed them on top of the grave so families could identify which grave was their child's. Yusuf was one of more than 20 Sunday school children killed that day. More shoes, marking more grave sites where the children were hastily laid to rest. This video was secretly taken and smuggled out to CNN to avoid Ethiopian and Eritrean troops. The ground here is hard and rocky. Underneath the branches and sticks are the grave sites for the victims. These shallow graves are the best Abraham and those with him could do, he says, as Eritrean soldiers watched over them. At least it offers these small bodies some protection. Eyewitnesses tell CNN Eritrean troops are supporting Ethiopian forces in their battle in Tigray. They say they recognize their uniforms and dialect. Ethiopia denies Eritrean troops have crossed into the region. But in January, the US State Department said it had received credible reports of Eritrean troop involvement in the conflict in Tigray. And in a statement to CNN, they said Eritrean forces should be withdrawn from Tigray immediately. It is these Eritrean troops that villagers from Mariam Dangalat say entered and massacred their friends and family. Yet Abiy Ahmed denies any civilians were killed during military operations. Through dozens of witness testimonies, CNN has been able to recreate how the massacre at Mariam Dangalat unfolded. We chose 3 witnesses with differing vantage points to illustrate the full horror of what happened on that day last year. We must warn you that the testimonies you're about to hear are disturbing and graphic. Those who spoke to us risked their lives to do so, and we used animation and actors' voices to hide their identity. The day had begun a happy one. Desta was helping to prepare for the hundreds of pilgrims who come every year to celebrate the festival of the Feast of St. Mary. Suddenly, he heard gunshots. He could see Eritrean troops blocking the entry and exit points to the village. He fled.
I moved up to the mountain area. From a distance, I could see them taking people and shooting them.
This is a map of Dangalat. It sits inside a valley. Here is the church where Desta sees what happens, and here is the village where people are returning from morning mass. Marta and her family were returning from morning church services when she saw people running. She headed quickly home, where she was confronted by Eritrean troops.
They came to our house, then they told us to get out. There were a lot of soldiers outside, and they were saying, come out, you bitch. We said, we are civilian, showing our IDs. They didn't ask any question, they just opened fire.
Isaias, his sister, and his child fell to the ground, shot. Marta's husband, who was next to her, was also shot.
I thought he was going to survive, but he died.
This sketch is based on a real photograph taken months earlier. It's of Marta's wedding day. She is now expecting her first child. The killing continued. People told CNN some bodies lay out for as long as 5 days. The troops refused to allow them to bury the dead, even as hyenas and vultures preyed. Abraham, the memory keeper, had taken refuge in Dangalat from the war and devastation in his home village. Today, he was helping clean the church ahead of the festival. But instead, he became part of the team burying the dead. Among them, more than 20 school children in a mass grave.
They were all so young, and they took them and killed them together in a field.
Abraham and others registered the kids' names as best they could. One by one, the shallow graves were uncovered and parents came to identify their children. Some so badly disfigured, they could only be identified by their clothing. Back in Dangalat, Abraham and others, we visit the mass graves. Surrounding them are some haunting reminders of what happened during the massacre. A bloody jacket, some rope used to tie the victims. CNN asked Abraham to mark where these graves are located. You can see here the blue paint he used. Using this footage, we were then able to identify the grave's location. In response to CNN's reporting, the US State Department told CNN reports of a massacre at Maryam Dangalat are gravely concerning and demand an independent investigation. 51 out of the 53 pictures you see here were victims Abraham tells us he helped bury himself. Many of these photographs are from identity cards Abraham retrieved from the bodies. Abraham and many others continue to keep record, continue to risk their lives to keep alive the memories behind each name. It's a litany of loss, but for now, it's all they have to hold on to. نعم الباغر, CNN.
ወረርቲ ሰራዊት ኢሳያስ ኣብ ልዕሊ ስድሮም ዓረብናዊ ጨፍጫፍ ከም ዘካየዱን ንብርክት ዝበሉ መዓልታት ሬሳ ከየልዕሉ ከም ዝተኸልከሉን ይዛረቡ።
እዚ ዝሞተ ምንኣሰይ ሓወይ እዩ መምህር ዓለም ሸዊት ገብረዋህድ ይበሃል ዩኒቨርሲቲ መምህር እዩ ኣብ ገዛ እዩ ውዒሉ ናብዛ በሪ እዩ ውፅእ ክብል ኣብታ በሪ መፅኦም ኣብኣ ትኩስ ትብል ሰላማዊ ሰብ እየ ተበሎም ኣታተይ ገይረኩም ተበሎም ደገስ ብጋሪ ተቀሪኦም ተጎቲቶም መፅኦም መናእሰይ بزي منهم حاتياتهم بزي منهم تقوارهم سلاماويان سبكم قتلي أرقفهم شعبية أبي أحمد واحويهم كخفتهم كفيتهم كفاتهم ببعض تماسك فرسوا وايدا كفيتهم لا تودي قتل مسبر وأوه تلنا عادك ما بينا مقام آخر هذا كفافية النبا وقزايم كنت تدكي ودينو لقوالي عادم كلتهم دكاي سلسته معتب دكاي سوسته رمسينهم
بتعمل جاكنا اليوم بقى خمس زلك زلو خمس زلو زلو بتعمل خمي دينير ناش احنا ركاي كده هذا ترى وزلو من ناس عوايو اسونا ابويو هذا كده سو دواعيو عوايد ما ادينا من يقابزو
ጅግና ሰራዊት ትግራይ ጸላቲ ካብ መብዛሕትኡ ከባቢታት ትግራይ ጸራሪ ግሙጻ ኣብዚ ሕዚ እዋን ዝፍጽሞ ዘሎ መስተክራዊ ጅግንነት ከም ዝተደበሱ ዝገለጹ ዞም ስድራ ግዳያት ወረርትን ተስፋሕፋትን መለዮም ክድምሰሱ ኩሉ ዝካኣሎ ክገብር ከም ዘለዎ ሓቢሮም
ኩላና ተጋሩ ተብዒና ክነጥፎኦም ኣለና የዝል ኣነ በቃ ጆኹም ይብለም ኣነ ንባዕለ ሕጂ ወደይ ሰዲደ እየ وديني حوينا نافد اللي يلين ودي أوتي سديدة يلهم حنا ليس بحواتنا نزنتنا فرحواتنا قن حنا نافد لنا يتبيهم لكنا دلوقتي يوم كنك على سينا كلنا حاورنا كلنا ننت عدنا زين خدلو زين ولد طلع زين تفعل من قد يلي
You were watching footage filmed by a soldier-turned-whistleblower, now in hiding. This video was obtained by a pro-Tigray media organization based in the US. The video you're watching will show these Ethiopian soldiers execute these men, a war crime. The Ethiopian government has waged war against Tigray's ousted regional leaders for the last 5 months with the help of neighboring Eritrea. Ethiopia has implied the atrocities in Tigray are mainly Eritrea's doing. That's not true, and here's why. We know these are Ethiopian soldiers because of the Ethiopian flag on their shoulders here and here.
examining details of the stitching, colour and camouflage patterns. Military experts confirm to us that the uniforms match those of the Ethiopian army. In addition, the soldiers are speaking Amharic, the official language of the Ethiopian Federal Army, distinct from the local language. We also know the location by analysing the video and geolocating the footage. We know it's in central Tigray by the mountain range and terrain just south of the city of Aksum. This model developed by Amnesty International then verifies that location through spatial analysis. You can see the mountain range matches the footage. The captives were moved from where you saw them sitting to here, 1.7 kilometers away. We know that because the video was tracked and mapped and key geographical features were matched on the basis of a high-resolution satellite image of the site. By pinpointing the location, CNN was able to speak to local villagers who confirmed their family members were dragged away by Ethiopian soldiers and have not been seen since. Some believe their loved ones are in this video. You can hear soldiers asking the whistleblower to come closer. The wording here is important. Execution. This is premeditated. They've rounded up these men to kill them. We must warn you, what you're about to see is horrifying. Shoot them in the head, he says. And they do. Look at the left of your screen. The man shoots. We paused the video just before his victim falls to the ground. And again, another soldier raises his weapon towards the man in the white scarf. The video cuts out, but the next scene tells you what happened to him. To all of them. The soldiers continue to shoot, making sure that there are no survivors. What you are witnessing is an extrajudicial execution. We counted at least 34 young men at the beginning of this video. All are now presumed dead. Their bodies casually flung over the ridge. No attempt to hide what has been done here. No apparent fear of consequences. Their actions are so appalling, we can only show individual frames from the video. But it doesn't stop here. You can hear someone saying, "Check that one. That one is not dead. Kill him, or I will come." The same soldier moves further along the ridge and shoots from close range as other soldiers watch on. Much of the region remains under an Ethiopian government blackout, but CNN and Amnesty International were able to speak to local villagers and family members who told us that at least 39 men remain missing from the village. One man was able to watch the video and confirmed to us that his brother is among the dead depicted here. Family members continue to search for their loved ones but have been unable to reach this remote area. Their wish to respectfully bury their dead will go unheeded. Nermal Bagher, CNN, London.
በማህበረ ዲቦ ላይ የተፈጸመው ድርጊት በሰዓቱ ቦታው እኛ ነበር። የ5ኛ አንደኛ ብርጌድም እንደ አጠቃላይ እንደ 25ኛ እዛ ነበር። ያ ድርጊት የተፈጸመው በ25ኛ ክፍለ ጦር ነው። በሰዓቱ ክፍለ ጦር አዛዥ የነበረው ኮሎኔል ሶፊያን ይባላል እና ይህ ድርጊት እነዛ ሰዎች በሰዓቱ የተገደሉት እኔ ማቃቸው 43 ሰዎች ናቸው እና 43 ሰዎች እንዳጋጣሚ ተይዘው መጡ። በጠላ ወደ ማህበረ ዲጎ ለመግባት ሲሉ ነው እነሱ ተሰብስበው ነበር በጋራ ሲሄዱ የነበሩት። እነሱ ተይዘው መጡ። ከዛን እንዳጋጣሚ እኛ ብርጌድ 1 የ25ኛ ብርጌድ 1 ሁሉም በየግዳጅ ቀጠናቸው ነው የነበሩት። በዛሽ ቦታ ላይ ያ ግድያ የተፈጸመበት ቦታ ላይ ነበሩት። ክፍለ ጦር መድፈኞች ነበሩ እና እቺ የብርጌድ 1 ስታፏ አለች። እና አብረን ነበርን እንደ አጠቃላይ እዛ ቦታ ላይ ቦታ ይዘን ቁጭ ብለን ነበረ እና እንደ አጋጣሚ እነዚህ ሰዎች መጡ ሲመጡ ሶፊያን ቀጥታ መደብ አወረደ ለታምራት ማለት ነው ታምራት ማለት የክፍለ ጦሩ ዘመቻ ነው ዘመቻ ኃላፊ የነበረ ሻለቃ ነው እና እንዲገደሉ መምሪያ አወረደለ
As you know, forces from Eritrea are there, and we have forces from an adjoining region, Amara, that are there. They need to come out. And a force that will not abuse the human rights of the people of Tigray or commit acts of ethnic cleansing, which we've seen in western Tigray, that has to stop. We also need full accountability. We need to get an independent investigation.
A show of force by Ethiopia's National Defense Force in its Tigray region. A government visibly flexing control. We travelled outside of the capital Mekelle, across the region to see if the Ethiopian government has kept its promises to the world. Unimpeded aid access and the withdrawal of their Eritrean allies. The conflict for control of Tigray blazes on. Days earlier, these Tigrayan forces fighting for regional autonomy pushed out Eritrean troops from this town. As we arrive, one young man, Kassa, wants to show us where his father, brother and cousin were taken and executed just days ago. The blood is still visible. It stains the ground. They didn't want to wash away his blood. He says they wanted to leave it there. The body they took to the graveyard, but the blood, the place where his father was executed, the family still wants that place marked. Just a few meters from where Kassa's father died, his brother and cousin were executed. Murdered, he says, by Eritreans, the same Eritreans who are supposed to have withdrawn. We return with Kassa to his family. In total, just this one family lost 7 loved ones less than a week ago.
All of us have to run and hide when they come, even the women. They rape the women and then kill them. May God bring mercy on us because we don't know what we can do.
The Eritreans are not only still here, but a day into our journey, and we've already found evidence of fresh atrocities. We hear that the holy city of Aksum to the west has been sealed off by Eritrean soldiers for 12 days. We need to see for ourselves. So we head out towards Aksum, but don't get very far. Something's not right. The team car behind us radios in. There's a car coming. A UN driver flashes us a warning, but we decide to press on.
Hello. Salam. Can we go ahead? We're gonna go. Thank you.
But the road ahead is blocked. We get out of the car with our hands up and identify ourselves to the Ethiopian soldiers.
Hey, hello. CNN. We're CNN. Journalists. Impossible. We are journalists. Impossible. Sir, tell us.
Ask our commander.
We spoke. No.
The soldier spots our camera.
Sir.
They're incredibly tense.
It's okay.
The soldiers close in on us.
We asked there.
Why not asking our commander?
Sir, we asked.
As we're pulled to one side, we turn on our covert camera.
Are we detained? And unless we are detained, we're not giving them the camera. We'll only go to the administration, the civilian administration. If you want to have detained a CNN team, then that's what's happened now, because we're not going to the camp willingly. They have now said that we are allowed to go and meet the general in a civilian location, but it is still against our will. But we're going.
On our way to the headquarters, we're able to hide our footage, and we are later released. At the local hospital, we find out why the soldiers didn't want us to film. What happened?
It's okay. You're clearly in shock. Just take a moment to breathe and then tell us what happened.
We were in the bus station when the shooting started. We were running, trying to get away, and that's when it happened.
This girl is so scared, she's covering her face, but she wants to tell us what happened, which is that a grenade detonated in front of a group of soldiers, and she says they started randomly opening fire on civilians. She is clearly not a soldier. She's a teenage girl, and she says that she was shot through the leg.
This is the main route to Aqsam. It's a vital supply artery, but for 12 days now, nothing has been able to pass. First checkpoint, Ethiopian soldiers let us through. Ahead, we've been warned by senior Ethiopian military sources we'll find Eritrean soldiers. As we crest the hill, before we reach the second checkpoint, we turn on our covert cameras.
Hello, sir. Can I show you our papers? We're CNN. Journalists? We have permission to travel.
These are Eritrean troops, captured here for the first time on camera. A ragtag army in their distinctive light-colored fatigues. Some are also wearing a previously retired Ethiopian army uniform, a clear bid to sow confusion as to whether they're Ethiopian or Eritrean.
The Eritrean soldiers are telling us that we don't have permission to travel, even though the Ethiopian soldiers waved us through. The other thing is, Eritrean soldiers are supposed to have begun withdrawing, but here they are, manning a checkpoint and blocking us from going forward. Hello, sir. Selamat. How are you? Journalists? We have permission. You're asking us to turn back?
Both Eritrea and Ethiopia promised these troops would withdraw weeks ago. Yet this foreign force is still here and occupying, obstructing a key supply route with impunity. After calling the interim government, military contacts and others, on our fourth attempt, we make it through. 3 days after setting off, we finally arrive in Aqsam, a UNESCO heritage site, the holiest city in Ethiopia and a place of pilgrimage. But even the act of worship here is a dangerous one. The war is never far away. At a local health facility, we see firsthand the consequences of this almost 2-week siege. 2-month-old Johannes's life has been hanging in the balance. His mother risked her life and his to get him past the soldiers encircling the city so that he can receive life-saving oxygen.
When he first got ill, it was a hard time, so I couldn't bring him. There was an active war. He got weaker, but I couldn't find transport. I had to travel difficult roads alone to get him here.
He's not out of danger yet. The hospital electricity flickers on and off, and they are still waiting to get more cylinders of oxygen. In the almost 2 weeks that Aqsam has been cut off from the outside world, violence has spiked. We find this 24-year-old teacher.
Do you know who did this to you? Eritrean soldiers did this. I'm so sorry. This is just one case that we are able to capture because we're here, but it's impossible to know how many more women this was done to while this city was closed off from the outside world.
Another health facility, Aqsam Referral Hospital. Soldiers walk in and out of the hospital with impunity. One spots the camera and runs off. They've run out of blood here. Doctors and medical students are donating their own, but it's still not enough. People who could have been saved are dying. Every patient you see here, the old, the young, the helpless, all injured in this conflict. Our journey here has brought into focus the hollowness of Ethiopia's promises. As we leave Aqsam, a line of soldiers encircles the hospital. There is no respite. Na'mal Baghi, CNN, Aqsam.
يلا قلتي سيبوا تاكوسو أتا تاكوس نو بلاي تاكوس أتا كي هرمور بلا تقام أبشر هذا
أبزوان الزي بحق المزراب منجست إيرترا ناي سلام حيل مخان إثيوبيا راح زي كونت عالم فريدي يزول أبزخون عالم تكيرتا منجست إيرترا سلام يسرح ملماتي يسرح زبل أمنتي يزول
بقلب باجو سمدين ترجي تلت كلية تبتل بوليتيكا سنترو تبتل ኢኮኖሚ ሴንተሩ ተመታ መሰረተ ልማት በሙሉ ተመታ ኃይሉ ተደመሰሰ የሚደመሰሰው ተደመሰሰ የሚበተነው ተበተነ ይሄ ኢትዮጵያን ሊያፈርስ የነበረ አስኳል በትንቱ ወጣ ዳትስ የጦርነቱ ዋና ዓላማ አንደኛ ይሄን ማፍረስ ነው ሁለተኛ ራሳችን
ሰበር ዜና ጀግናው የፌድሪ መከላከያ ሰራዊታችን የመቀሌ ከተማን ሙሉ በሙሉ ተቆጣጠረ።
እንግዲህ ዶክተር ደብረጽዮንን በተመለከተ የትግራይ ክልል ፕሬዝዳንት ነበሩ፣ ምክትል ፕሬዝዳንት ነበሩ። ከዚያ በኋላ ጦርነቱ እየገፋ ሲሄድ የመቀሌ ከንቲባ ሆነው ቀርተዋል። ኋላም ከመቀሌ ተፈናቅለው ወደ ሀገረ ሰላም ሲሸሹ ደግሞ የሀገረ ሰላም ከተማ ከንቲባ ሆኗል። ትላንት የኢትዮጵያ መከላከያ ሰራዊት እንዳስታወቀው ደግሞ የሀገረ ሰላም ከተማ ሙሉ በሙሉ ሲቆጣጠርም እዛ የሚገኘው የዋሻ አለቃ ሆነው ነው የቀሩት። በአሁኑ ሰዓት የዛ ዋሻ አለቃ ወይም መሪ ሆነው ያሉ ሰው ናቸው።
እነ ጌታቸው ረዳ ሲፎክሩ፣ እነ ደብረጽዮን ሲፎክሩ፣ እነ ስዩም መስፍን ሲፎክሩ ጦርነቱ ከመጀመሩ በፊት እንደ እነዚህ ሰዎች ምን ሆነው ነው ኒኩሌር ታጥቋል ወይ እንል ነበር። ኒኩሌር ታጠቀ እንኳን እንደዚህ አይፎክርም ስንል ነበር። እነሱ 2 ዓመት ተዘጋጁበትን ዝግጅት በ2 ሳምንት ድራሹ ጠፋ። አሁን ያ የሚፎክር የነበረ በሙሉ ከመኪና ወርዶ ጠፍቷል። ስለዚህ ከመኪና ወርዶ የጠፋውን እግረኛ እየፈለግን ነው አሁን።
ይሄ ሰራዊት የተሰጠውን ሚሽን የመጀመሪያው ሚሽን 100% አሳክቷል። ነገር ግን ወንጀለኞች መያዝ አለባቸው። ወንጀለኞች መያዝ አለባቸው።
የሰላም ጠንቅ የሆነውን ኃይል ኦልሬዲ የቀብር ስነ ስርዓቱን ፈጽመናል። ቀሪውን ደግሞ ለቀን
አቶ ስብሃት ነጋ የተናዘዙትን ኑዛዜ ነግሬያችሁ ልጀምር። ያው የጁንቶ አባላት አቦይ ስብሃት ነው የሚላቸው። እኔ አቦይ እንዳልላቸው አባቴ ሊሆኑ አይችሉ። እንዲህ አይነት አባት አልመኝም። ለማንኛውም አቶ ስብሃት በተያዙበት ሰዓት የምዕራብ እዝ አዛዥ ጀነራል መሰለ የሚባል ምን አሉ ብለን ጠየቅነው። ቀደም ሲል ከመያዙ በፊት ስብሃት ቢያዝ ምን ይላል ብሎ ይዋዩ ነበርና ጀነራሎቹ አይ ቢያዝም እኮ ህገ መንግስቱ ጥሩ ነው፣ ህገ መንግስቱ እንደዚህ ነው ብሎ ነው የሚያወራን አሉ። እንደተያዘ ያሉት አልቀረምና አንደኛው ጀነራል ሲያወያየው ህገ መንግስቱ ጥሩ ነው ተወያዩበት 90% 80% እያሉ ያወራሉ። መሰለ ተስፋዬ የሚባለው ጀነራል የዚህ ምዕራብ እዝ ትንሽ ተጫዋች ነውና ተው ስለ ህገ መንግስቱና እስኪ አንተ ምን ይሰማሃል ብሎ ይጠይቀዋል አቶ ስብሃትን። እኔ የምሰማኝን ልንገርህ አለው። አዎ እኛ ከሞትን እኮ ቆይተናል አለ። ከሞትን ቆይተናል መቼ ማለት ነው የሞታችሁ? ጀነራል መሰለ ሲጠይቅ የሞት ነውማ ኢህአዴግ የሚባለው የጠፋ ጊዜ ነው። አሁን የምታደርጉት ነገር ምን እንደሆነ ልንገር ይላል አቶ ስብሃት። አሁን እያደረጋችሁ ያላችሁት የቀብር ስነ ስርዓታችንን እየፈጸማችሁ ነው አላቸው። እና ስብሃት የተናዘዘው መያዙ ሳይሆን እያረጋችሁ ያላችሁት የጠቅላላ የጁንታውን አባላት የቀብር ስነ ስርዓት ነው እየፈጸማችሁ ያላችሁት።
ለትግራይ ህዝብ፣ ለትግራይ ወዳጆች፣ ለተከበረው ምክር ቤት መግለጽ መፈልገው ቲፒኤልኤፍ ማለት በንፋስ ላይ እንደተበተነ ዱቄት ማለት ነው። ከእንግዲህ በኋላ ሰብስበን ዱቄት ልናደርገው አንችልም። እሱን ትተን አዲስ ኃይል፣ አዲስ የተማረ አሁን ያለውን ዘመን የሚዋጅ አስተሳሰብ መምራት የሚችሉ ሰዎች መፍጠር ይቻላል። ትግራይ ውስጥ በጣም ብዙ ሰዎች አሉ፣ ብዙ ምሁራን አሉ፣ ብዙ ሰዎች አሉ። አብረን መላላጥ መጋጋጥ ጠቀሜታ የለውም እንበልና የተከበረው ምክር ቤት ፈቅዶ መንግስትንም እረፍ ብላችሁ እዚያ የተሸሸጉ አንዳንድ ሰዎች መጥተው መንግስት ይሁኑ ቢባል እና መቀሌ ቢመለሱ በምን አይናቸው ነው ሚዲያ ላይ ቀርበው እንደ ትናንትና መናገር የሚችሉት? መልካቸው ስለተበላሸ ብቻ አይደለም፣ ሞራልስ ደቋል እኮ ቤት በኩል ማንስ ነው የሚሰማቸው? ማን ነው የሚያምናቸው? ካሁን በኋላ ፕሬዝዳንት እንዴት ይኮናል? አይኮንም። እስጎን ይሄ ታሪክ ነው። በፍጹም ብንዋጋ ባንዋጋ አይደገምም። ዝከበርካ ህዝብ ትግራይ ከም ዝፍለጥ ሓመደ ድበእቲ እኩይ ሓይሊ ኣብ ምዝዛም ኢና ንርከብ። እቲ ሓይሊ ብኩሉም ኣንፈት ተኸቢቡ ኣብ ጸቢብ ኣንኬል ኣትዮ ኣሎ። መውፅእን መእተውን ስኢኑ ተዓፊኑ ኣብ ጻዕረሞ ዝርከብ ሓይሊ ኮይኑ ኣሎ። ኣብዛ እዋን እዚኣ ኣብ ግንባራት ተረኪቡ ኣመራርሓ ክህብ ኣብ ዘይክእለሉ ደረጃ በፂሑ ኣሎ። ደቅካ በብቦትኡ ብዘይ ምግብን ማይን ኣደዳ ሞትን መቁሰልትን ይኾኑ ኣለዉ። ስለ ዝኾነ ደቅካ ነዚ ዝቕብር ዘሎ ሓይሊ መስዋዕቲ ካብ ምዃን ብቕልጡፍ ኣድህን። ደቅካ ዝበልዎ ምግብን ዝሰተዮ ማይን ዘይብሎም ብዓፈሙዝ ከም እንስሳ እናተደፈው ድራር ዓረር ይግብሮም ኣለዉ ሞት ደቅካ ዕድመ እቲ እኩይ ሃይሊ ብሰዓታት ወይ መዓልታት ካብ ምንዋሕ ሓሊፉ ምንም ጥቕሚ የብሉን ሰብ ንዕላማ ንሓገርን ህዝብን እምበር ንጉጅሌ ጥፋኣት ኢሉ ክመውትን ኣኻሉ ክጎድልን ግቡእ ኣይኮነን ካባኻ ንላዕሊ ሳዕቤንን በሰላን ውግ ዝፈልጥ የለን እቲ ገባት ጉጅሌ ንርእሱ ኣይመውትን ኣኻሉ እውን ኣይጎድልን ዝኸበረ ህይወት ደቅካ ንጉጅሌ ሸፋቱ መጣልኢ ክኸውን ኣይግባእን ስለ ዝኾነ ህይወት እሽላት ደቅካ ካብ ከንቱ ጥፋኣት ንምድሓን እቲ ካብ ወራር አንበጣ ዝተረፈ ኣዝመራኻ ንምእካብን ናብ ንቡር ስራሕካ ብፍጥነት ንምምላስን ሻማ ሻማ ኢልና እዚ ጉጅሌ ነቃብጾ ብምባል ይጸውዕ ዝኸበርካ ህዝብና ዓመደ ድበእቲ ዝሞተ ገባት ጉጅሌ ብሓፂሩ ወጌና ናብ ልማታዊ ውራይና ክንዓቱ ይግባእ ስለ ዝኾነ ህይወት እሽላት ደቅካ ካብ ከንቱ መስዋዕትነት ኣድህን ከምቲ ዝጀመርካዮ ድማ ንሓይልታት መከላከል ሃገር ኣድላይ ዘበለ ሓገዝ ግበር በዚህ አጋጣሚ ነታ በመስዋዕትነት ዘሐነስካየ ሃገር መሊስካ አድህንን ታሪካ ሐድስን እዚ ሃገርካ ኢትዮጵያ ትቀርበልካ ዘላ ክቡር ጸወይትዩ ኣብ ዝተፈላለየ መምህዳራዊ ብርክታት ትርከቡ ሲቪል መራሕቲ እቲ ተጻብኦ ምስቲ እቲ ኣብ ውሽጢ ህወሓት ዝተሃብኦ ጉጅለ ጥራሕ እዩ ስለዝኾነ ርእስኩም ካብዚ እኩይ ሃይሊ ከተረቑ ጻዊት ቀሪብልኩም ኣሎ በብዘለኹምዎ ድማ ህዝብ ወዲብኩም ምሳይልታት ምክልካል ሃገርና ኮይንኩም ሃገራዊ እማም ክትእዛዝሙ ይግባእ ከምዚ በምግባር ዕድመ እቲ ጉጅለ ኣብ ምህፃርን ርእስኩም ድማ ካብ ተሃታትነት ኣብ ምድሃን ግቦኹም ፈጺሙ ኩልኩም ኣባላት ሃይልታት ጸጥታ ትግራይ ኣብዘን ዝሃለፈ መዓልታት እንታይ ከም ዝገጠመኩም ርኢኩም ኣለኹም ናይቲ ስርዓት ተረባህቲ ብዓፈሙዝ እናደፈው ናብ ሓዊ የእትወኩም ኣለዉ ንሳቶም እናበለውን እናሰተዩን ይደቅሱ ንስኻትኩም ኣብ ጥራሕ ከብድኹም ኣደደ ኣደር ትኾኑ ኣለኹም ንሳቶም ግና ደሞም ንምፍሳስ ኮነ ድምፂ ተኩሲ እንኳ ክሰምዑ ኣይደልዩን ነየና ኢላማ ኢኹም እሽላ ዕድሜኩም ብኸንቱ ተህፅሩ ዘለኹም ንትግራይ ከ ንምንታይ ወላድ መኻን ክትኸውን ትገብርዎ ኣለኹም ንምንታይ ጉልበትኩም ኣብ ልማት ዘይተውልዎ ንምንታይ ትግራይ ጠወርታ ካብ ምዃን ኣኻልኩም ተጎዲኡ ሸኽማ ትኾኑ ኣብ ምንዋሕ ዕድመ እዚ ዝተሰዓረ ሓይሊ ንምንታይ ደምኩም ተፍስሱ ህይወትኩም ትገብሩ ካብ ማልታት ዝበለጸ ዕድመ ንዘይብሉ ዝተኣሰረ ሓይሊ ህይወትኩም ክትገብሩን ደምኩም ከተፍስሱን ፈጺሙ ኣይግባዕን አንጻር ትጉጅሌ ተላዕሉ ወይልኩም ናብ ሓይልታት ምክልካል ሃገር ሃቡ እቲ ሃገርኩም ዝሃበተኩም እድል ከየምለጠ ኣብዘን ክልተ ሰለስተ መዓልትታት ርእስኩም ኣድህኑ ኢትዮጵያ ብሃቅተኛታት ደቃ ክትስርያ
Tigray, with an estimated population of 6 million people, has now been under a de facto blockade for almost a year. Humanitarian aid is not arriving at anywhere close to the levels needed, and basic services remain cut off, including electricity, banking, and telecommunications. The spread of the conflict into Amhara and Afar is further increasing needs and complicating response efforts. In Tigray, more than 90% of the 6 million population needs food aid. And an estimated 400,000 people are living in famine-like conditions based on the latest UN analysis. Fuel shortages, a continuing communications blackout, and other challenges make it difficult to assess the exact extent of the need. But we are seeing acute malnutrition rates at levels comparable to those we saw at the onset of the 2011 Somalia famine. The de facto blockade of Tigray is preventing us from getting aid to people in desperate need. Since the end of June, we have only had access to Tigray via one road through the neighboring Afar region, where movements are being severely restricted by official and unofficial checkpoints and roadblocks, insecurity, and other obstacles. The UN estimates that we need to bring in roughly 100 trucks of aid a day to meet basic needs.
For me, particularly the news of the violence against the women is incredible and something that probably not has happened in any wars or conflicts in that region. Maybe a word about what is the aim of Ethiopia. When I met the Ethiopian leadership in February, they really used this kind of language that they are going to destroy the Tigrayans, they are going to wipe out the Tigrayans for 100 years and so forth, which for me referred to very serious human rights atrocities and crimes as well. If you wipe out your national minority, what is it? You cannot destroy all the people, you cannot destroy all the population in Tigray, and I think that's very obvious that we have to react and because it looks for us like an ethnic cleansing. It is a
عباي جميعا مش بدرتي بريد قاعد تحريفنا حموشنا